Good afternoon, Salem. Better. My name is Rene Romero, and I'm the field organizer here in Salem, New Hampshire. I'm originally from Los Angeles, California, but I've been in New Hampshire for the past 4 months to work on this historic campaign. And in that time, I've learned that California and New Hampshire have a lot in common. The first being Donald Trump accused both California and New Hampshire of rigging the campaigns against him. That's pretty good company to keep. But in two opposite parts of the country, it is evident that we're plagued by the same things: rising cost of healthcare, rising cost of education, and the rising cost of housing, just to name a few. One of the main campaign slogans for the Bernie Sanders campaign is "Not me, us." Much like this campaign, this nation is not about one individual. We are a vast and diverse nation, but we are still in this together. And unlike our current president, who seeks to divide us, Senator Sanders recognizes and talks about being in this struggle together. Solidarity. This is just not a campaign. It's a movement. When candidates take donations from corporations and wealthy individuals, those donors get to walk into the White House and into the Oval Office. They get cabinet-level positions and ambassador assignments. But when you have a movement for a political campaign, when you fundraise off everyday people, the people that get to walk into the White House is us. But before everyone in this room and all of us can walk into the White House, we got to walk for Senator Bernie Sanders. We got to knock on doors, make those phone calls, and have those conversations with voters. Because the things that keeps them up at night, Senator Sanders has been talking about them for decades. So he's been fighting for us, now we need to fight for him. And before I get off the stage, I want to leave you with this. In Queens, New York, in front of a record-breaking crowd, Senator Sanders sent out a call that many have answered. Will you fight for someone you don't know? So I want to tell you about someone you don't know. I want to tell you about Victor Gomez. He was an immigrant, originally from El Salvador. He came to the United States at a very early age. Due to archaic immigration laws, he wasn't allowed to stay and was ultimately deported back to El Salvador. And his story ends the way it does for so many. He was killed by gang members. Victor Gomez was my brother. And the reason I drove across this country to be on this historic campaign was that up until this moment, Senator Sanders didn't even know who my brother was. But due to his humane approach to immigration, he had been fighting for my brother for decades. And I will always be grateful for that. And I would like now to introduce you to Representative Rennie Cushing.
Good morning, Western Rockingham County. I'm Rennie Cushing, and I'm from Hampton. Greetings from the beach. It's good to be near Canopy Lake Park. I'm one of the co-chairs of the Bernie Sanders for President campaign here in the state of New Hampshire. I just want to quickly thank everyone in this room for everything that you do every day and for everything that you're going to be doing for the next 3 months to help transform America and make Bernie Sanders the President of the United States that we deserve. Bernie's not new to New Hampshire. For 4 decades, we've known him. We've seen him at the helm in the city of Burlington, where he beat back the predatory speculators and the greedy real estate interest who are trying to turn the city of Burlington into a place that worked for the 1% and not for the rest of us. And today, if you look at that city, it's an inspiration, and it's an example of a place where a city that can be inclusive, that can have a vision of community. That's what Bernie has been about his entire political career. Bernie Sanders is somebody who we know as a piece of He's as solid as a piece of New England granite. You can't get, you know where he stands with us all the time. There's Irish poet Seamus Heaney had a refrain that I think of a lot, particularly at this time, and it goes, history tells us, don't hope on this side of the grave. And yet, once in a lifetime, that longed-for tidal wave of justice will rise up, and hope and history rhyme. This is a moment where we need to make hope and history rhyme, and we need to make Bernie Sanders the next president of the United States. Sean Lewis.
Thank you, sir. Good afternoon, Salem. Thank you very much for being here. I know you've heard that a couple of times. And before I get going, I just want to say that as the vice chair of the Salem Democratic Town Committee, with my chairwoman keeping a close watch on me, I just want to say what a wonderful turnout it has been here today. So thank you. A round of applause for yourselves for coming out here. For those of you in the know, Salem is not exactly a hotbed of progressive politics, so by all means, stick around for a little while. But let me say, it's an honor to be here today, and it's an honor to introduce Senator Bernie Sanders of Vermont, because if you'd asked me 5 years ago if I would be here, it would be a resounding no. This moment, in fact, would never have crossed my mind, because back then I didn't care about politics. I only cared about myself, my family, and my career. Politics didn't matter. It was something I didn't understand, something I didn't feel that I could change. And that is until May 27th in 2015, and on that day, Bernie Sanders announced a run for president of the United States. And a lot has happened in the 4 years since that announcement. And I'd like everyone to take a moment and remember what the political landscape looked like 4 years ago. And I'd like you to think about the fact that a self-identified democratic socialist from Vermont chose in that moment and in that election cycle to take on big money and the Democratic Party establishment. When that speech began, I thought to myself, this guy doesn't have a chance. And by the end of that speech, unbeknownst to me at the time, I had joined the political revolution. The words he spoke that day in Burlington, the words he spoke that day moved me. They move me still. They have brought me to where I am right now, and I am so proud to be here with all of you. Back then, it took guts to stand up to the Democratic establishment. It took guts to say that climate change was an existential crisis facing my generation. It took integrity that few politicians have to call out the corruption in our economic system. And it took a hell of a lot of guts to run for president powered only by people, not by corporate donors. And above all else, it took guts to stand up for something that the Democratic Party has all but given up on, and that is Medicare for all. Universal health care. And Renee touched on this. Rennie did as well, but what impresses me most about Bernie is that he doesn't stand for this today because it is popular. He didn't stand for it in 2016 because it thought it would earn him votes. He stood for it because it was the right thing to do. Whether we're talking about healthcare, the environment, from civil rights in the 1960s to LGBTQ rights right now, Bernie has been and will be on the right side of history. He is a throwback to a time when the Democratic Party was the party of FDR and the New Deal. He is a throwback to a time when this party was about Lyndon Johnson and the Great Society. We went to war against poverty, not poor people. And we build bridges while our opponents build walls. Because we believe that democracy belongs in the hands of the many, not the few, not the 1%. It belongs right here in this room with each and every one of you. That is what Senator Sanders believes, and under a President Sanders, that is what the Democratic Party will stand for every damn day. So given our history, Given our party's history, I'm always confused when people claim that Bernie is dragging the party to the left. I couldn't disagree more. I think Bernie is leading the party home. But I'm not here today. I am not here today because I like Bernie's policies, though I do. And I'm not here because he gave one great speech 4 years ago. He's given a hell of a lot of good speeches since then. I'm here because Bernie Sanders gave something back to me. Something that I didn't know I'd lost along the way. Something that I think we all need in a time like this, and that is hope. If you've read the news in the last couple of days, weeks, months, years, you know that hope is hard to come by. Our government has been corrupted at the highest level. College students, do we have any college students in the room? Congratulations, you owe $1.6 trillion in debt. Fun fact, you have to pay when you exit out that door. And for those who have been watching the courts, Mitch McConnell and his allies in, it's okay, you can do that. Mitch McConnell and his allies in Washington have engineered it so that Trump, not President Obama, but that President Trump fills vacant judgeship after vacant judgeship, which is changing the face of the judiciary for an entire generation. And for the first time in a century, the life expectancy of my generation, and believe it or not, I am a millennial. As Pete likes to say, I just snuck in under the wire. For the first time, the life expectancy of my generation, and I know that many of you are a part of that, is lower than our parents'. But I still have hope. I have to because a few weeks from now, my wife will welcome our first child into the world. I'm not really doing the hard work. I'll let her know that you all approve. But our child was conceived and will be born, God willing, all within a single policy year. And I want you to think about that, because that was the first thought that passed through my mind when I found out we were having a child. The first thought wasn't, I'm overjoyed at being a father. That was a very close second. My first thought was that the cost of having a child is going to be something that we can afford because we're going to hit our out-of-pocket max on our health insurance. And in that moment, I was overshadowed by a sense of relief. Relief knowing that we'll hit that out-of-pocket max, which means I can afford to bring my wife to a hospital in a few days to give birth to our child without draining my life savings. And I want you all to remember that it is not a level of care that is so expensive in this country. In this case, it is an arbitrary date on a calendar that tells me when I owe a little and when I owe a lot. It is time. It is an arbitrary time set forth by a corporation that tells me whether or not I owe them more money for the same life-saving health care that my wife needs. No family should have to worry about losing their life savings because they or a member of their family need medical care. But I still have hope. I have hope that together we will make a better country and a better world for my daughter, for her and her entire generation. And that work starts right here, right now, in this room, and rooms just like it across the country. That means fighting for a Green New Deal to combat climate change. That means debt-free college so that the many young people here in this room can get the education they need without crushing debt following them for decades afterwards. That means regulating Wall Street so they don't destroy our economy through speculation and greed like they did in 2008. And that means, for me, Medicare for all, because access to health care shouldn't be a source of billions in profit. It should be a human right. As long as Senator Bernie Sanders is leading this fight, he will have my vote, and I hope he has yours. So if you want a better future for this country and your children, if you want an economic system that makes your life better, not just the lives of the wealthy, and if you think climate change is an existential crisis because there is no planet B, then I need you. I need you to stand up, knock doors, make calls, get involved any way you can, because we only succeed when we all work together. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, it is my sincere pleasure to welcome one of my political heroes, Senator Bernie Sanders.
Thank you. Whoa. It looks like we're going to have to knock down the wall next time. Let me thank all of you for coming here. Let me thank the many, many dozens of folks who are outside and who could not get in. I promise next time we'll have a larger venue. Let me thank Rene Romero for his great work on the campaign. Let me thank Rennie Cushing, a member of the legislature, for his long, long time support. And let me thank Sean Lewis for his support as well. Let me tell you a little bit about what our campaign is about and how it is different than other campaigns. Because we are here today not only to ask for your support to win here in New Hampshire, and with your support, we will win here in New Hampshire. We are here not just to ask for your help to win the Democratic nomination and to defeat the most dangerous president in the modern history of this country. And with your help, we're going to do just that. Because I believe we are putting together the coalition that will not only beat Trump, but beat him badly. But I am here to ask something else of you, and to tell you what the message of our campaign is about when we speak of us, not me. And what that means is two things. Number one, philosophically, what it means is that we believe that we are all in this together. That my family has to be concerned about your family, and your family has to be concerned about her family, and her family has got to be concerned about his family. That when one person hurts, all of us hurt. That is our vision of America. And that is a very different worldview. That's a very different worldview and vision, different vision than what Trump and his billionaire friends stand for. They believe that what human life is about is lying, cheating, and stealing, stepping on people in order to make even more billions of dollars. And our view of what the good life is about and what we want to do as Americans is something very, very different. We want to create a government and a nation that works for all of us, not just the very few. We want to create a nation, and this is not easy, and it's not going to happen overnight, but we want to create a nation based on the principles of love and compassion and justice, not greed and selfishness and corruption. So what this campaign is about is more than beating Trump. It is transforming this nation in very, very fundamental ways. Let me give you a few examples of what I mean and the need for all of us to think outside of the box, Don't think the way the media wants you to think. Don't think the way Congress and politicians want you to think. Take a step outside the box and ask the fundamentally important question of why? 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 So you live in supposedly a democracy. But in this democracy, the fact is, especially since Citizens United, that billionaires control the political life of this country. And that is something not acceptable to me. We are going to fight to create a democracy which is based on one person, one vote, not billionaires buying elections. We are going to create a democracy where we will no longer have one of the lowest voter turnout rates of any major country on earth. Our democracy does not suppress the votes of people of color or of young people. We're going to make it easier for people to participate in the political process. But it is not only a corrupt political system in which Congress and the U.S. Senate especially every single day are doing the bidding of the wealthy and the powerful. It is an economy which is rigged from top to bottom. It is an economy in which today, and I want you to hear this because you don't see it on TV, 3 people now own more wealth than the bottom half of American society. 3 people. Top 1% owns more wealth than the bottom 92%. In New Hampshire and in Vermont, we got many, many, many thousands of people who are out there working 2 or 3 jobs, trying to get by on 10, 12 bucks an hour, raise a family. And yet 49% of all new income goes to the top 1%. A 1% which in the last 30 years has seen a $21 trillion increase in their wealth, while the bottom half of America has actually seen a decline in their collective wealth. It is a country in which today half of our people are living paycheck to paycheck. You know what that means, paycheck to paycheck? You know what it means. You know what it means too well. It means that if your car breaks down and you don't have the $500 you need to get it fixed, you can't get to work. And if you can't get to work, you get fired. If you get fired, you can't earn the income you need to take care of your kids. When you're living paycheck to paycheck, and that's the family I grew up in, it means that if you get sick and you don't have the money to go to the doctor, you kind of hope that your problem is going to get better, and sometimes it doesn't. And 30,000 people in this country die unnecessarily every single year because they're uninsured or underinsured. Okay? We have got to create an economy that works for all of us, not just the 1%. And I want to thank the people of New Hampshire, not only for their support of me in 2016, but more importantly, for their support of ideas that the political establishment, the economic establishment, and the media said were radical and extreme and un-American. All right? But it turned out to the people of New Hampshire that wasn't the case. You know that if somebody works 40 hours a week, that person should not be living in poverty, right? That's not a radical idea. And that is why we have got to raise the minimum wage to at least $15 an hour. Now, 4 years ago, when I came here to New Hampshire and I said exactly that, people said, oh my God, federal minimum wage is $7.25 an hour. You want to double the minimum wage? Can't be done. Well, guess what? Because people have stood up and fought back, 7 states have already raised that minimum wage to $15 an hour. And the U.S. House of Representatives did the same. And our job is to get Mitch McConnell to listen to the American people and pass the legislation that I introduced. 4 years ago, I came to New Hampshire and I had another quote unquote, supposedly radical idea. And that radical idea was that the world has changed in the last 100 years and we have to redefine what free public education means. That 50 years ago it was great. First grade through 12th grade, free public education, great. But not today. And in a competitive global economy where the good jobs often require a higher education, that we need to make public colleges and universities tuition free. Well, all over this country, young people and their parents, and here in New Hampshire said, that's not such a crazy idea. We don't want our kids leaving school $50,000, $100,000 in debt. We don't want just rich kids to be able to get a great education. We think working class young people should have that same opportunity. In the last 4 years, all over this country, because people have stood up and fought, we're seeing states and cities moving forward to make public colleges and universities tuition free. A couple of months ago in New Mexico, public colleges tuition free for all of their residents. Number of leading medical schools, some of the leading medical schools in this country, NYU, Columbia, Cornell, have now established tuition-free medical school. All right? So we are making progress. But our job is to make sure that every kid in every state, and not just kids, an economy which is changing every day, every worker in America, every person in America, regardless of his or her income, has the right to get all of the education they need as an American citizen. And at a time in history when the Congress, against my vote, bailed out the crooks on Wall Street, at a time when a couple of years ago, Trump and his friends gave $1 trillion in tax breaks to the 1% and large profitable corporations, I think the time is now to cancel all student debt in America. Now, wouldn't it be nice to have a government that represented the working class of this country rather than the billionaire class? And there's another issue that I feel passionately about, and I know the people of New Hampshire and Vermont and this country feel passionately about. We are sick and tired of being the only major country on earth not to guarantee health care to all people as a human right. Today in America, and I want everybody to hear this because you don't hear it discussed all that often, we are spending twice as much per person on health care as the people of any industrialized nation, any other nation. You got it? We spend about $11,000. Think about it. $11,000 every man, woman, and child in this country on health care. Double what they spend in Canada and many European countries. And yet somehow or another in Canada and all over Europe, they manage to provide health care to every man, woman, and child in their country. So after spending twice as much per capita on health care, this is what you got. You got 87 million Americans uninsured or underinsured. Key word here is underinsured. What does that mean, underinsured? Anyone know? Of course you know. What does it mean? Me. Means you. All right. You want to elaborate on that?
High deductibles.
High deductibles. And again, what the campaign is asking all of you is to take a deep breath and step back and look at the craziness that goes on, the irrationality that goes on. People get health insurance. Oh, that's great. I got health insurance. but I still can't go to the doctor because I got a deductible. That is crazy stuff. It really is. What are people here paying for deductibles? How much you paying? $5,000. What else? $4,900. $10,000. All right, and that's not unusual. $5,000, $8,000. That's what we hear at every meeting we do. So what that means is you got insurance. Good news. Bad news. The insurance is by and large worthless because you can't go to the doctor when you need it. If you're working class, you don't have the money in your own pocket. That, my friends, is insane. All right, I mean, it really is. Take a step back. It's insane. And then the other part of this whole thing, all right, is you got premiums which are sky high for working people. The median family income in America is about $60,000 a year. That's the family right in the middle of the American economy. That family is paying about $12,000 a year for their health care costs, 20% of their entire income. If they have private health insurance, private employer health insurance, their employer is paying $14,000 a year. That's a hell of a lot of money for a family of four and for an employer. All right. Now, there was an interesting article today that appeared in a Washington, D.C. newspaper called Politico. And the article pointed out that a couple of years ago, I held a press conference with a number of United States senators and doctors and nurses, and we brought forth our plan for a Medicare for all single-payer system. And one of the leading healthcare industry lobbyists looked at this press conference and said, "Oh my God, support is growing for Medicare for all." And what that lobbyist proceeded to do is go out to the drug companies, go out to the insurance companies, go out, he was connected to the private hospital industry, go out to all the players who are making billions of dollars a year in this dysfunctional healthcare system and said, we got to fight Bernie Sanders and Medicare for all. And they are now raising, I guess, hundreds of millions of dollars to do just that. But we got a message for them. The function of a rational healthcare system in America is guaranteeing quality healthcare to all, not making $100 billion in profit for the healthcare industry. We will not tolerate a system in which workers are paying 15 or 20% of their limited incomes on health care. And when you talk about insanity in the healthcare system, it is not just that people who have health insurance and large deductibles can't get to a doctor. Talk about the pharmaceutical industry. Let me say a word about my good friends in the pharmaceutical industry. They are crooks. And look, you got to define things. All of the corporate elite, whether it's Wall Street and all these guys, they're incredibly greedy. And in fact, their greed is a very serious healthcare issue. It is addictive. If you got $50 billion, apparently that's not enough. You need a $55 billion, you need $60 billion, you need a bigger yacht than your neighbor. But it is not just greed. It is absolute corruption, all right? When you talk about the pharmaceutical industry, 2 points. Number one, they charge us by far the highest prices in the world for the same exact drugs sold elsewhere. A couple of months ago, I went to Canada with people who have diabetes. Anybody here dealing with diabetes or know people deal with diabetes? All right, insulin is what people who have diabetes need. In Canada, we bought the exact same insulin that you are using in this country for 1/10 of the price. 1/10. And it's not just insulin, it is major drug after major drug. Why is that? It is because over the last 20 years, the pharmaceutical industry has spent $4 billion in lobbying and campaign contributions. In other words, it is not the Congress that regulates the drug companies, it is the drug companies who regulate the Congress. And we're going to put an end to that. America should not be paying more than any other country on earth for the medicine that we need. Here is the insanity. Again, talk about health care. You got millions of people who cannot get to a doctor when they should because they're uninsured or they are underinsured. But then you get to the doctor. You're sick, you get to the doctor. Doctor said, Joe, I'm writing out a prescription for you. You're sick, here's the prescription. 1 out of 5 people under 65 cannot afford to fill the prescription their doctors prescribe. How insane is that? So you're sick, the doctor writes a prescription, and then you can't afford the medicine that you need. Last year, while we pay the highest prices in the world for prescription drugs, pharmaceutical industry, 6 major companies, made $69 billion in profit. So they're ripping us off right and left, and they use their profits along with their friends in the insurance industry to make sure that we don't pass Medicare for all. And by the way, in the Medicare for All program, nobody in America will pay more than $200 a year for the prescription drugs they need. End of discussion. Medicare for All will also, we're going to expand Medicare, and I hope the elderly people hear this. Right now, Medicare is a strong program, but it has its limitations, and we're going to expand it. Right now, Medicare does not cover hearing aids. We're going to cover hearing aids. Doesn't cover dental care. Doesn't cover eyeglasses. Does not cover home health care. And we're going to cover all of those important needs. Now, I have been attacked. Oh, Bernie, how are you going to pay for this? Because we just love the idea of private insurance. Everybody we know loves their private insurance company. Well, not anybody I have talked to, but I suppose somebody must, but I just haven't met that person. But right now, how do we pay for health care? Well, you pay through taxes and Medicare and Medicaid and all that stuff, but aside from that, you pay for it through your premiums. Spoke to a woman in Manchester a couple of months ago. She was in her 50s, I think. She was paying $1,700 a month in premiums. That's high. All right, but that's what she was paying, plus prescription drug costs. What are people paying a month here in premiums? Anyone know? $300 a month? What?
We were paying 26. We don't live in New York anymore, but
$2,600? $2,600 a month. All right. All right, what else are people paying? $2,600 a month, that's God, $30,000 a year, right, for your health care. That's a bargain. What else are people paying in premiums? Anyone know? Okay. $500 a month. $500 a month, that's $6,000 a year. Do you have a deductible? Okay. So there's $6,000, you got a deductible, you got out-of-pocket expenses, you got prescription drug costs. All right. So I want you to know, one of the ways we are going to pay for Medicare for All, it's not free. Healthcare is an expensive proposition. We are going to have a tax, a 4% tax. First of all, we're eliminating all your premiums. Ma'am, that $2,600 a month is gone. All right? Your deductibles are gone. You ain't going to pay more than $200 a year per prescription, no out-of-pocket expenses, okay? But you are going to pay something. I got it. It's not free. It's not free. So what we will do is have a 4% tax on income, exempting the first $29,000. All right, good. You're better at arithmetic than I am, because what that means is if you are that average family in the middle who makes $60,000 a year, that means we're going to tax you on $31,000 at 4%, which is about $1,200 a year for comprehensive health care. How's that? And your employer will also be paying substantially less for health care, which means more money available for wage increases. Now, how do we do that? What are we, magicians? How do we do it? This is how we do it. For a start, we end the $100 billion a year in profiteering that now takes place from the healthcare industry. That's gone. But even more importantly than now, we have the most wasteful and bureaucratic and dysfunctional system in the world. And what that means in this room of, what, we got 300 people here, there are probably dozens and dozens and dozens of different healthcare plans. You got a $5,000 deductible, you got a $10,000, you're in this network, you're in that network. Your prescription drugs are covered, your prescription drugs are not covered. And on it goes. To administer this system of thousands of separate plans requires hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars in administrative costs. Every time you're on the phone arguing with an insurance company, that happens once or twice, right? Telling them that, in fact, you do have coverage for the procedure that you need, you're paying for the guy at the other end of the phone telling you that you don't. You are paying the millions and millions of dollars in salaries for the people who sit at the head, the CEOs of the insurance companies. So by eliminating all of that administrative waste and having a very simple system, here's the system. And it's not a radical idea, it's what exists in Canada. Anybody know what happens if you end up in Canada for a month in a hospital after a difficult surgery? How much is the cost? Zero. It's not a radical idea. You go to any doctor you want. That program is wildly popular in Canada, supported by even the most conservative people in that country. That's it. That's exactly right. You pay for the parking. All right? And they spend half as much per person as we do. All right? Because their system is simple. You got a little card. Card will say Medicare for all. You go to any doctor you want. You go to the hospital when you want. You don't take out your wallet. You don't take out your credit card. And you end up spending, as a citizen in this country, a fraction of what you're currently spending, because we believe that the function of healthcare is to guarantee healthcare to all people as a right, not to make huge profits for the healthcare industry. So when you see the ads here in New Hampshire, and they are surely coming, they'll be on your television, they'll be on your radio, they'll be on the internet, they'll be in your newspapers. Big ads. Bernie Sanders wants to destroy the American healthcare system. Terrible, terrible, terrible. Understand that it is the insurance companies and the drug companies who are paying for those ads. And what this whole debate is about is whether or not they are going to continue making tens of billions in profits while so many of our people are uninsured and underinsured. And whether they like it or not, history is on our side. We will win this fight. Wanted to say a word. You know, there are so many issues out there that we can go on for a very, very long time. But I wanted to talk about an issue that just cannot be avoided. Needless to say, I disagree with Donald Trump on everything. He is a pathological liar. And I have concluded, I don't think, in fairness to Trump, I don't think he understands the difference between truth and lying. I don't think he does. And I think he lies every day. I think he is running the most corrupt administration in the modern history of this country. I think he will be impeached, and I think he should be impeached. But above and beyond all of his lies and his racism and his sexism and his homophobia and his xenophobia and his religious bigotry and all the rest, what Trump is doing is not only harmful to the United States, it is harmful to the entire planet. Donald Trump is dangerously wrong when he thinks that climate change is a hoax. Climate change is not a hoax. Climate change is an existential threat to our country and to the entire world. Climate change is real. It is already causing massive damage in this country in countries all over the world, and climate change is in fact caused by human activity. And here is what is scary. Scientists have been telling us about climate change for a number of years. What they have very recently told us is that they have underestimated the severity and the speed in which climate change is causing damage in this country and what will happen in the future. They underestimated the speed at which the polar ice caps are melting, the oceans are warming, sea levels are rising, underestimated the severity and extent of extreme weather disturbances, underestimated what this will mean in terms of climate change refugees. United Nations is estimating that we may have 100 million or more people driven from their land all over the world because they can't find water to drink or land to grow their crops. And think about what that means in terms of world security when people are leaving their homeland, going into other countries. We have a major, major global crisis on our hand. And anybody who tells you that climate change is not real or is not a major crisis is literally putting at risk the lives of their kids, their grandchildren, and future generations. And that is why I have introduced, amidst everything I do gets criticized by somebody or another. But we introduced the most comprehensive climate change plan ever introduced by a candidate for federal office. It is built on the principles of the Green New Deal. And what that means is we are telling the fossil fuel industry that their short-term profits are not more important than the future of this planet. And I wish I could tell you otherwise, I really would. But we don't have a whole lot of time. We can't afford to be nibbling around the edges here. We need to take on the fossil fuel industry. We need to transform our energy system away from fossil fuel to energy efficiency and sustainable energy. We need massive investments in retrofitting and energy efficiency, retrofitting our older homes and buildings, massive investments in wind and solar into our transportation system. Now, here is my dream, and we have got to, here is my dream, and I don't know if it's going to be able to take place or not. But right now, in this world, countries around the world are spending about $1.8 trillion a year on weapons of destruction, weapons designed to kill each other. As President of the United States, what I will do, and it's not going to be easy stuff, reach out to Russia, reach out to China, reach out to the young people in these countries, in India, in Pakistan, in Brazil, all over this world, and say that maybe, just maybe, instead of spending $1.8 trillion on weapons designed to kill each other, maybe you should pool our resources and fight our common enemy, which is climate change. And one of the hopeful signs, this climate change things, the more you read it, the more nervous you get. Our enemies out there, our opponents are saying, Bernie Sanders is an alarmist. Yeah, let me plead guilty. I am very alarmed. And everybody in this world should be very alarmed. But one of the gratifying things that I'm seeing, which is a beautiful thing, is in our country and all over the world, we're seeing young people standing up and saying, you know what? We want to live in a planet that is healthy and habitable. And you better do something about it. So I thank the younger generation. This is an example where the young are leading the old. And that is a good thing. Just a few other issues, then we'll open it up to some questions and comments. One of the issues we are going to deal with very forcefully is the fact that today we have more people in jail than any other country on earth. Did you all know that? China is 4 times our size, communist, authoritarian country. We have more people in jail than China. And we have to appreciate and recognize that we have a racist, broken criminal justice system, period. So we are going to do, what we are going to do is invest in jobs and education for our kids rather than more jails and incarceration. It costs less money today to send the kid to the University of New Hampshire than to jail. Let's send them to the University of New Hampshire. All right? We are going to end private prisons and detention centers in this country. We are going to end the incredibly destructive so-called war on drugs. And we're going to do that. We're going to do that by legalizing the sale of marijuana in every state in this country. And by expunging the records of those who have been arrested for possession of marijuana. One of the things that sickens me, there's so many things about Trump that we can go on and on about, but one of the things that sickens me is his desire to divide our people up based on the color of our skin or where we were born, and his constant demonization of undocumented immigrants in this country. On and on it goes. What I believe is that we must move this country forward, and I will take that leadership role, to comprehensive immigration reform and a path toward citizenship. On day one, through executive order, we will undo all of the racist executive orders that Trump has promulgated. And on that day, we will reestablish legal status for the 1.8 million young people eligible for the DACA program. And we will create a humane border policy, a policy which is not based on agents ripping little babies from the arms of their mothers. That is going to end under our administration. Together, we are going to address the epidemic of gun violence in this country. Our gun policy will be written by the American people, not by the NRA. And the very good news is that what we have seen in recent years is gun owners and non-gun owners, people in rural states like New Hampshire and Vermont, people in urban areas, New York City, Los Angeles, literally coming together around what we call a common sense gun safety proposal. And I won't go into all of the details, but the bottom line is people who should not own guns will not own guns. We're going to end the so-called gun show loophole. We're going to make it impossible for people to legally buy guns and then sell them to criminals. And what the majority of the American people now want is that we end the sale and distribution of assault weapons in this country. As a U.S. Senator, I am often on the floor of the Senate listening to the speeches of my Republican conservative colleagues. And I must tell you that I get a little bit tired of hearing these so-called conservatives talk about getting government off the backs of the American people, talking about small government. If they believe in getting the government off the backs of the American people, then they should recognize that it is women in this country who should control their own bodies, not politicians. So my promise to you is that A, we will codify, make law out of Roe v. Wade, and number two, I will never nominate anybody to the U.S. Supreme Court who is not 100% pro Roe v. Wade. Let me conclude by saying this. All of you know who have studied history that real change never ever takes place from the top on down. Real change always takes place from the bottom on up. That is true of the labor movement and the struggles of workers to be able to form unions. It is true of the struggles of women in order to end their second-class citizenship. It is true of the civil rights movement and of African Americans trying to end the racism that exists in America. It is true of the gay rights movement and of people determined to be able to love anyone they want, regardless of their gender. Real change always takes place when millions of people look around them and say, you know what? The status quo is not working. We have got to move toward justice. And in my view, we are at this moment right now. People are looking around them and saying, American democracy is not about billionaires buying elections. The American economy is not about a handful of billionaires having so much wealth while 500,000 Americans sleep out on the streets tonight. America is not about young people not being able to afford to go to college and get the education that they dream of, or leave school $50,000 or $100,000 in debt. America is not about people dying because they can't afford to go to a doctor. America is not about ignoring the great existential crisis facing the planet. We're about leading that struggle, not ignoring it. So we are in an extraordinary moment in American history. And it's above and beyond Trump. Trump is part of it, but by no means all of it. And what we need at this pivotal moment in American history is for millions of people to stand up and fight back and tell the corporate elite that this country and our future belong to all of us and not just wealthy campaign contributors. Now, I'm a U.S. Senator. I'm a U.S. Senator, and I understand the power of the 1%. I mean, you're seeing that right now literally with Mayor Bloomberg, who has decided to use part of his $55 billion not to buy a yacht, not to buy another home, not to buy a fancy car, but to buy the United States government. Okay? But it's not just Bloomberg. This goes on and on and on. So what our campaign is about is not just fighting for the agenda I talked to you about. It is a political revolution in which ordinary people stand up and fight back. So this afternoon, I'm here to ask you for your support to help us win here in New Hampshire. I think we got an excellent chance to do that, and with your help, we will do it. And I'm asking not only for your help in enabling me to defeat Donald Trump. I think we have an excellent chance to do that. I am asking for you to work with me and with millions of other people to transform our economy, to transform our government, to create a vibrant democracy, to create an economy that works for all. That is what this campaign is about, and we'd love to have you on board. Thank you all very much.
Hi, Bernie.
Hi.
My name is Greg Post.
Greg?
Yep. It's kind of two-pronged, so just bear with me.
Don't make it too complicated. Greg.
Okay. So the first part is, for myself, I've worked in hospitality management for years, worked in Boston, and for the past year I've been unemployed. I've always believed in what you stand for, Bernie, and standing up for people. I've always tried to stand up for the staff, and that landed me unemployed, unfortunately. With that being said, I've been doing Lyft for the past year, which I'm proud to see that we are forming the Boston's, I think it's Rideshare Drivers Guild. And
I think you just endorsed us last week.
you,
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So I was happy to see that, and I want to be involved in that. But what I've been doing over the course of the past year, I wear my Fuel the Burn bumper sticker very proudly on the back of my car, which can lead to some interesting conversations. And I get a lot of questions about my support for you. And I've talked to a lot of Trump supporters over the course of that time. And I think what's happened is there is a lot of anger and hatred. And sometimes I feel, unfortunately, even as Bernie supporters, we might play into that a little bit. And we have to find a way to better engage with them.
Good.
And I've tried my best to talk to them. I try to engage, and I've seen a lot of good things happen from it. And for me, it's really, how do we go forward and try to engage them
Good.
and get them involved?
Good. Greg, I think that's a very important point. Thanks for raising it. Look, are there some of Trump's supporters who are racist and sexist? There are. Are we going to win them over? We're not. That's it. Now you got to understand that. But I think the majority of his supporters are probably people who are angry and disgusted at a political system that has left them behind. All right? They're working longer hours for low wages. Their kids can't afford to go to school. They may not have health care. They're seeing their jobs go to China and to Mexico. And they're saying, who stood up for us? Democratic leadership stand up for us? No. Who's standing up for us? So Trump has come along. Maybe we don't agree with Trump on everything, but he's at least, wrecking the system and all that stuff, and they appreciate that. And I think what we have got to do is say, yeah, you're right. The establishment works for the 1%. If that's what your thought is, you're right. But understand, and this is hard stuff, and I know that, but the Trump supporters, we have got to tell them that when he campaigned for office, he said he was going to stand with the working class of America. He lied to them. You don't stand with the working class when you support legislation to throw 32 million people off the health care that they have. That's not standing with the working class of America. All right? And again, this is hard, I know, and I applaud you. Not everybody is willing to sit down and talk to those folks, and we've got to do it. And to say to them, do you really think it is a good idea when Trump campaigned about tax reform that would benefit the middle class, remember that? But 83% of the benefits go to the top 1% as a result of Trump's so-called tax reform. Amazon ends up paying not a nickel in federal income taxes. Trump told the American people that he was a different type of Republican, that he would not cut Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security. Take a look at his budget. Massive cuts to Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security. So this is hard stuff, and I know it. And I thank you very much for reaching out. That's what we've got to do. But our main point is to tell people all over this country that Trump is not only a liar, he is a fraud. He is a fraud. Not easy, but that's what we've got to do. But thank you for that question, Greg. Okay, I see. Can we get a mic to this gentleman right there?
Thank you, Senator Sanders. My name is Richard Stafford. I live in Salem, Massachusetts. I really enjoyed working for you for your candidacy 4 years ago. My question is specifically related to health care. Every year, thousands of qualified American students are decline admission to American medical schools. What can be done to break that logjam so we have more people?
Again, this is part of the dysfunctionality of the current healthcare system. We do not have enough doctors in this country. We do not have enough nurses in this country. When we talk about an opioid crisis, which this state knows only too well, we don't have enough mental health counselors in this country. This is the richest country in the history of the world. So there are a number of mechanisms, and Medicare for All will do this. Among other things, we greatly expand the National Health Service Corps, which will forgive debts to anybody who wants to practice medicine or psychology or nursing in an underserved area. Number two, we expand medical school enrollment. We need more doctors in this country. We need more nurses in this country. And when we have a system of healthcare that is not designed for profit, we can do that. But your point is very well taken. Okay, I see a hand right here of a gentleman in a black baseball cap turned around. Okay. Yeah, here it comes. Just give us your name and be loud.
Sure. My name is Jared Saunders. I live in Haverhill, Massachusetts. I've been a longtime supporter. I was wondering when we can maybe organize a March of Solidarity on DC with, like, I don't know, millions of people, or if we can pull that together around the country.
Okay. Let me take your question and expand it a little bit and say this. I don't know the answer when we can do it, but this is what we can do. When I talk about us, not me, Charity, what it means is that as President of the United States, I will not only be Commander-in-Chief of the military, I intend to be Organizer-in-Chief, okay? And what that means is I believe that the ideas that we feel strongly about, these are not radical ideas. These are the ideas that the American people support. Problem is that Congress is to a significant degree owned by special interests. So pick up on your point, what we have got to do is go to state after, give you one example. Kentucky is one of the poorest states in this country. People there are really struggling. It's a beautiful state, but people are struggling. And they got 2 United States senators who represent day after day the rich and the powerful. Maybe it's time for all of us to get together with the people of Kentucky and stand up and fight for justice in that state. And West Virginia, and Mississippi, and Alabama, okay? And I'll tell you one of the beautiful things that's beginning to happen in this country is that working people are standing up and fighting back. You've read in the last couple of years, teachers in states like West Virginia and Kentucky and Oklahoma. Do we have anybody here from Dedham, Massachusetts? Dedham. All right. Yes? Dedham. No? Okay. Well, we just met with some of the teachers there. They had the courage to go on strike in order to make sure that they are providing the quality education that their kids deserve. So you're seeing that in Massachusetts, and we're seeing that all over the country. But to answer you, that is what we need in one form or another, is people standing up and fighting back. Okay, I see a woman right over there. Yes, ma'am. Yes, you. All right, so mic coming.
Okay. Hello, Senator Sanders, and future President of the United States. Mine is more of a comment. I just recently got involved in politics because, for whatever the reasons may be, it just never really impacted me, or I just kind of kept my head in the sand. But obviously with this new administration in charge, it's kind of led me to get more involved. But I have 4 young sons. We live here in Salem. Today is my son's birthday, who's behind me.
Happy birthday. Hold that mic close to you. Turn that mic up. I think you may have turned it off. Got it on?
And a lot of the topics that you address impact me and my children. Climate change, Medicare for all. I mean, the list goes on and on. But I guess my question for you...
right, maybe we'll ask Mr. Bloomberg for a loan. I don't know.
What advice can I give young children? My son turns 14 today. In 4 more years, he'll register to vote. What advice can I give and what hope I can give to my boys and kids alike?
I think you want to, that's a great question. And happy birthday to your son. You know, I think we have got to teach kids a lot better than we are doing now about what democracy is really about. You know, democracy is a fairly new idea in world civilization. And it's a pretty radical idea because historically, as you know, we've had kings and queens and czars determining what countries did. When people went to war, what taxes people paid, a few people made those decisions. And we got a president who seems to want to move us back into that direction. But I think it's important for the young people to understand that God knows how many people have fought and died to defend American democracy. To say that, you know, in New England, we have town meetings where everybody gets together and we argue about how much you want to spend on schools or on highways. That is an enormously important issue that kids have got to understand that your son will have decision-making power about the future of this country rather than somebody on top. And we got to fight to defend that. And that means that young people and all of us have got to be involved in the political process. If we're citizens, that is what we do. You know, it always blows my mind that, you know, on a Sunday, you got millions of people watching the Patriots, all right, but you're talking about, you know, healthcare. Oh, I'm not interested. So we have got to engage young people and make them understand that climate change, man, that's a life and death issue for your kid. And healthcare, and whether he's going to get a decent job, whether he's going to get a decent education. And we can determine that future, not somebody else. So that would be my message. All right. All right, maybe, okay, I got a question over here from young women right here. Oh, we don't have a microphone anymore. All right, let's.
Hello, my name is Morgan. Oh, okay, closer. Okay, great. So my name is Morgan. So I am getting married next year, and I live in Somerville, Massachusetts. Thank you, in Boston. And right now in Somerville, there isn't a house for really like cheaper than like $1 million, honestly. Like the cheapest one's like $800,000, which isn't anywhere near where I can afford. And I really don't want to like change jobs or have to move cities to like have a family and start a family. So that's some like housing and stuff like that really affects me where I live. So I guess my question is like, how is that something that's going to change?
Thank you. You know, and that's one of the issues I should have mentioned. I hadn't fully realized that if you run around the country as I do, what you recognize in city after city, state after state, you think it's just a Boston issue? It is not. Go to Los Angeles, go to San Francisco, go to Seattle, go to Burlington, Vermont, go to Greenville, South Carolina. And what you are looking at is a major, major housing crisis, okay? So as I mentioned earlier, you got over 500,000 people sleeping out on the streets tonight because we have not built virtually any low-income housing in the last many years. But that's only half the issue. You got 18 million people spending 50%. Imagine that? You imagine it, right? You're doing that. All right, again, when we talk about crazy, you are spending 50% or?
Probably over that.
Yeah. All right. So how do you have money left over to do anything else if you're spending 50% of your income to have a roof over your head? That's crazy stuff. So to answer your question, we have introduced a major housing program which will build some 10 million units of affordable and low-income housing. And by the way, when you do that, just as with the infrastructure, you're going to put millions of people to work building that housing. Number two, I grew up in a working-class home, and I lived in a rent-controlled apartment in New York, Brooklyn, New York. Is that for rent control or Brooklyn? I don't know. Brooklyn, all right. But I think what is going on now, gentrification. See, what you're seeing all over this country is people with money, real estate speculators coming in. So I can't make money out of you. You don't have enough money. So we're going to build expensive, very expensive housing. By the way, not only for Americans, but for a lot of people from God knows where who are zillionaires and can afford expensive condos. We're going to build for them. And when we do that, we drive rents up all over this country. So we are looking at a rent control structure which will give tenants some protection against outrageous rent increases. All right. All right, I see a lot of hands. Let me apologize here. I think we're going to have to get going. Or let me see, do we have time with the staff go here? All right. Do we have time for selfies or not? We don't. Okay. Shannon, are we running late? All right, if we could do that. All right, let's do. I apologize that I can't answer every question. We just got to hit the road. But if people would like to come up quickly and get a selfie, let's do that. Thank you all very much.